Ever wish you could be absolutely sure about what you believe? Well, we're about to break down an analysis of 1 John chapter 5, which is a text that claims to offer exactly that. So let's dive in and see how the argument gets built. All right, so this source material we're exploring kicks off with a really powerful idea. It's not just about believing, it's about having a victorious faith, the kind that can supposedly conquer life's biggest challenges. But, what does that really mean, to overcome the world? It's talking about something we all get, right? That struggle with doubt, all the pressure from the outside, the battles inside our own heads. The analysis we're looking at says this is the big problem the text wants to solve. And boom, here's the answer the text gives, plain and simple. The key, the supposed secret weapon for this victory, is just one word: faith. But hold on, because as we're about to find out, it's not quite that simple. Not just any old faith is going to cut it. Yeah, this is a really important point. The speaker is clear. We're not talking about just believing in yourself or some kind of vague positive thinking. Nope. It's a laser-focused faith in something very specific, that Jesus is the Son of God. And honestly, that one distinction, it's the linchpin for the whole thing. Okay, so that brings us right to the heart of it, doesn't it? If everything hangs on this one specific faith, how in the world can you be sure you've got the real deal? How do you know it's actually working? To really get the argument for certainty, we gotta get some context. This letter wasn't just written on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. No way. It was forged in the middle of a massive battle of ideas. There were these other teachers pushing a totally different version of Christianity, and this letter was a direct response. And this wasn't just some boring theological debate. We're talking about the fundamental identity of Jesus being up for grabs. So, who was the main opponent? Well, the sermon points to a guy named Cerinthus. His whole deal was this. He taught that Jesus was just a normal guy. But at his baptism, bam, a divine spirit came down on him. But, and this is a huge but, that same spirit supposedly took off right before the crucifixion, leaving a mere man to die on the cross. That was the idea 1 John was written to shut down. And this chart just lays it out so clearly, right? You've got these two totally different ideas clashing. On one side, you've got Cerinthus' view. Jesus had this temporary divine power-up. But on the other side, you've got the argument from 1 John, Jesus is and always was fully God and fully man. The whole debate really boils down to this. Was the divine Son of God there for the water, the baptism, and the blood of the cross? So, yeah, that throws us right back to the main question. With all these different ideas floating around, if your victory really depends on having the right faith, well, how can you be sure? How do you get that certainty? And according to the sermon we're breaking down, the rest of this chapter is all about answering exactly that. Okay, so the text basically makes its case in two ways. Think of it like a 1-2 punch for certainty. There's evidence from the outside, stuff that's historical, and then there's evidence from the inside, something personal. Let's dig into both. What's interesting is where the argument begins. It doesn't start with your feelings or my feelings. It starts with things that supposedly happened out in the open, in history. These events are framed as God's public statement, his testimony to everyone about who Jesus really is. And this is where those code words water and blood come back in. According to the sermon, the water is all about Jesus' baptism. That super public moment where a voice from heaven says, "This is my son." Then the blood points to the crucifixion, arguing that Jesus, as the God-man, wasn't abandoned but sought his mission through to the end. Put them together, and that's your external evidence. But it doesn't just stop there. With stuff that happened thousands of years ago, the text makes a huge pivot. It goes from the outside world to the inside. It argues that all that historical stuff can become a real, personal experience for someone who believes. This is what the source material calls the inner witness. And it's not just a hunch or a gut feeling. It's described as something more solid, an actual internal awareness that comes from the Holy Spirit. It's this deep inner change, which the Bible calls being born of God, that supposedly flips the switch and lets you see that the historical stuff is true for you. So when you combine that external evidence with this internal witness, you get a pretty dramatic result. The text basically says it draws a line in the sand. It splits, everyone, into two totally separate groups. And there is absolutely no gray area here, at least according to this interpretation. It's a really sharp contrast. On one team, you've got those from God. They have the understanding, they have the protection, and on the other team, the whole world, which the text says is under the influence of the evil one. It's a very black and white picture of the world. And for the folks in that first group, the sermon points out 3 specific promises that are supposed to give even more assurance. First, there's protection from a lifestyle of sin. Second, a kind of divine shield where the evil one does not touch him. And third, a special gift of understanding to know what's true. So the letter wraps up with this one final command. It's short, it's to the point, and honestly, it's a little unexpected. And the sermon we're looking at argues that this ancient warning is incredibly relevant, even for us right now. I mean, think about it. After this whole deep dive into theology, certainty, Jesus, faith, the very last sentence is, keep yourselves from idols. It can feel a little random, right? Like, where did that come from? But here's the brilliant takeaway from the sermon. The point is that the biggest idol problem we have today probably isn't about little statues on a shelf. It's about intellectual idols. It's about us creating a God in our heads that fits our preferences, a God that's a bit easier to swallow, a bit more convenient than the one described in the text. And that leaves us with a pretty challenging question to chew on, doesn't it? What are our modern idols? What are the unquestioned beliefs, the convenient ideas, the custom-built theologies that shape how we see everything, maybe without us even knowing they're there?